Good day. This is Dimitri Lascaris coming to you from Athens, Greece on June 2nd, 2026 for Reason to Resist. Today, I'm going to talk to you about the most recent mind-boggling developments in the criminal U.S.-Israeli war of aggression on Iran. Yesterday was quite a shit show, even by the standards of the unhinged Trump White House. In the second half of this report, I'll give you a brief update also on battlefield developments in Lebanon and the Persian Gulf, which are perhaps not quite as telling, but nevertheless significant and connected to the events that we're witnessing in the political sphere. Before I begin, I'd like to remind you to please like and share this video if you find it to be informative. And if you're not already a subscriber to Reason to Resist, please do become one and help us to expand the reach of our unapologetic resistance journalism. You can also help us to do more on-the-ground reporting, something that we think you don't see enough of in the alternative media, by purchasing Reason to Resist merchandise. And there's a link in the description of this video informing you of how to do that if you might be interested. Now, with that, let's get into the ceasefire shit show from yesterday. And I'm going to begin with this post from the war criminal Benjamin Netanyahu, which I think really ignited a firestorm. He stated at 2:47 a.m. on June 1st, 2026, that in response to the repeated and ongoing violations of the ceasefire in Lebanon by the terrorist organization Hezbollah, that's quite rich. No one is less respectful of ceasefires or more terroristic than Israel. He says, and also the attacks against our cities and citizens, I've instructed the IDF, together with Defense Minister Israel Katz, to strike terrorist targets in the Dahia district of Beirut. And this is the southern segment of Beirut, which is frequently described by the corporate media in the West and Western governments as a Hezbollah stronghold, although not everybody who lives there is necessarily a supporter of Hezbollah. In any case, and being a supporter of Hezbollah, there's no reason to, impose a death sentence on a person, especially because most of the world doesn't actually consider Hezbollah to be a terrorist organization. In any event, there had been, it was widely reported, an understanding reached between Trump and Netanyahu when Netanyahu immediately violated the ceasefire that was entered into in the first half of April, that Netanyahu would at least refrain from attacking Beirut. Well, he did attack Beirut a couple of times recently, and then with this announcement, coupled with another announcement, which I'm not going to show you in the interest of time, that a warning to the residents of Dahia that they should evacuate, which did precipitate a huge outflux of persons from residents from the area. That coupled together with Netanyahu's statement, I think pushed the Iranian side too far. And it began, the response of the Iranian government began with a statement by the foreign minister, Sayed Abbas Araghchi of the Islamic Republic. He said, for immediate attention, the ceasefire between Iran and the U.S. is unequivocally a ceasefire on all fronts, including in Lebanon. Its violation on one front is a violation of the ceasefire on all fronts. The U.S. and Israel are responsible for the consequences of any violation. And then it became more heated from there. There was a report in Tasnim News, an Iranian media outlet, which I understand is connected with, has some relationship with the IRGC, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, that Iran had halted negotiations with the U.S. in protest over Israel's violation of Lebanon ceasefire. And just remember how many times we've been told during the last 10 days that the Americans and the Iranians were told by the Western corporate media, citing unnamed Western sources and unnamed sources from Gulf autocracies, that they were on the verge of a deal. Well, here we are a week later approximately, and Iran is actually halting the negotiations in response to this criminal declaration by Netanyahu. And the Tasnim report goes on and says, Hezbollah and Iran also eye a full blockade of the Strait of Hormuz and intensification of operations on other strategic choke points, including the Bab al-Mandeb Strait, in retaliation. So this would be a major escalation and would preclude the true halt to all negotiations, preclude Trump from making any claim, however implausible, that there is progress being made towards a resolution of this catastrophic war. Now, there's more. The spokesperson of the IRGC then came out. This was basically escalatory statements from the Iranian side. I think that's a fair characterization. He came out and said, Netanyahu, continuing his acts of aggression in the region, has threatened to bomb Dahya and Beirut and has issued an evacuation warning to their residents. Given the regime's repeated violations of the ceasefire, if this threat is carried out, we warn residents of the northern areas and military settlements in the occupied territories. So he's threatening to hit, he's threatening that the Iranian military will respond to strikes on Beirut with attacks on northern occupied Palestine. And he concludes his statement by saying if they do not want to be harmed, and that is the northern Israeli colonists, they should leave the area. Well, this precipitated, I think it's fair to say, a panic attack in the White House. Let me start by showing you the tone that Donald Trump was adopting before all of this brouhaha broke out. At 1:02 a.m. yesterday, he was pounding his chest and he said, Iran really wants to make a deal, and it will be good for the USA and those that are with us. Just bear in mind that only hours later, Iran said that it was halting negotiations, but he's saying here that they really want to make a deal. And Trump continues, but don't the Democrats and various seemingly unpatriotic Republicans understand that it is much tougher for me to properly do my job and negotiate when political hacks keep negatively chirping at levels never seen before over and over again, that I should move faster or move slower or go to war or not go to war or whatever. Just sit back and relax. It will all work out well in the end. It always does. If only that were true. Then, after the Iranians reacted quite negatively to the declaration by the war criminal Netanyahu that he was going to bomb Beirut yet again, Trump, in a hissy fit, we're told, and I'll get back to that in just a moment, called Netanyahu. And promptly after that call, put out this statement. This was yesterday. I had a very productive call with Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu of Israel, and there will be no troops going to Beirut, and any troops that are on their way have already been turned back. And just pausing there, Israel has absolutely no plan to actually occupy Beirut with ground forces. If it does, it's completely insane. It would be a total bloodbath for the Israeli military, not simply for the civilian population of Beirut. They don't simply have the army at this stage that could occupy Beirut. They did once. Now that's no longer the case. Their army is on the verge of collapse, and it's far too small to achieve such a task with the capable fighters of the Lebanese resistance defending the capital. So there weren't any troops on the way to Beirut. So this claim that he got Bibi to do something like that is complete poppycock. Trump goes on and says, likewise, through highly placed representatives, I had a very good call with Hezbollah, and they agreed that all shooting will stop. That is a flagrant lie. The shooting has continued throughout the day today, and there's no confirmation from Hezbollah, either official or unofficial, that any such conversation took place. And then he says Israel will not attack them, and they will not attack Israel. That's the deal that Hezbollah has supposedly agreed to. Now, even if Hezbollah did agree to that, it is inconceivable that Netanyahu is going to stop attacking Lebanon. And he's given no indication that he's willing to stop attacking Lebanon. In fact, he said the opposite. And there's no indication that Trump is willing to do what's necessary to stop Israel from attacking Lebanon. Again, I'm going to come back to that. And in fact, it's now so obscene to suggest that Netanyahu has entered into any kind of a truce or ceasefire that, it should be a criminal offense just to put those words in the same sentence with Israel. The words ceasefire or truce. This is not something that is in the DNA of the genocidal entity. They don't do ceasefires or truces. Other sides do them, and Israel violates them relentlessly. There is no prospect of Israel ever respecting a truce or a ceasefire until its leadership is held accountable seriously accountable for its crimes in some manner. And there's no indication that that is about to happen anytime soon. Now, then we get this promptly after this post went out about 18 hours ago. So this would have been yesterday afternoon. Trump puts out heatedly another one, rapidly another one, and he says in this one, at around the same time, talks are continuing at a rapid pace with the Islamic Republic of Iran. Thank you for your attention to this matter. What talks? Iran had just halted the talks, and there's no indication that they were willing to resume them, at least not at this point. And then he hurriedly put out yet a third post, Trump did, and he said, I had a conversation with Bibi Netanyahu today. He just wants to drive this point home. Ask him not to go into a major raid of Beirut. There was no raid of Beirut being planned on the ground. Now, if he's talking about a vicious, criminal, satanic bombardment, yeah, that probably was actually being planned by Israel. And again, he repeats, I also had a conversation with the representatives of the leaders of Hezbollah, and they agreed to stop shooting Israel and its soldiers. No proof, no evidence that that is true. Likewise, Israel agreed to stop shooting at them. On the contrary, Netanyahu has said quite the opposite. Let's see how long that lasts. Hopefully, it will be for eternity. Hopefully, indeed. Now, in response to this further post by Trump on Truth Social, the war criminal himself spoke out last night, and he stated, tonight I spoke with President Trump and told him that if Hezbollah does not cease attacking our cities and citizens, Israel will attack terror targets in Beirut. This stance of ours remains unchanged. So the offer on the table, which Israel would not respect, even if it were accepted by Hezbollah, let's be very clear about that. But that's the ostensibly the offer is if they don't attack Israel at all, we won't attack Beirut, which would leave them under those terms, the Israelis, free to attack the rest of Lebanon. But Hezbollah would be barred from attacking any part of Israel. Personally, I think there's zero prospect of Hezbollah agreeing to this. I would be shocked if Hezbollah would agree to this. It would be a grotesquely one-sided arrangement, saying that Israel can attack any part of the country other than the capital, but that Hezbollah can't attack any part of the country that is attacking Lebanon. And, he concludes this statement, Netanyahu, by saying, in parallel, the IDF will continue to operate as planned in southern Lebanon. So it's very clear that from all the prior statements, what the plan in southern Lebanon is. It is to occupy as much of southern Lebanon as possible and destroy as much of the civilian infrastructure as possible and implement a reign of terror against the civilian population so that they can ethnically cleanse the south of Lebanon. That's the plan they've been carrying out for weeks. So this notion, Netanyahu is just flatly contradicting Trump's claim, which I just showed you a moment ago, that Israel had agreed to stop shooting at Hezbollah. It did no such thing, and even if it did, its agreement wouldn't be worth toilet paper. And finally, Trump concludes his series of dishonest posts yesterday with a shot at the corporate media, which frankly have been extremely kind to Trump. Let's be very clear about that. And I mean, they have been to some degree critical, but they have not been nearly as critical as they should be. For example, you're not going to see any of these media outlets that he refers to here, the failing New York Times, the China Street Journal, which obviously a reference to the Wall Street Journal, the corrupt and now irrelevant CNN. I've seen no reports on any of these media outlets acknowledging that the war on Iran was based on a pack of lies and was a violation of international law. To the extent they've been critical because the Trump regime has failed in its stated objectives, whatever they may be, not because the war was an extreme violation of the United Nations Charter and inhumane, and as I said, based on deceptions. So he goes on and on with another shot at the government-friendly corporate media. Now, there's an unspoken assumption in all of this back and forth between Trump and Netanyahu and the reporting of the corporate media. And the unspoken assumption is that Netanyahu made the decision to attack Beirut without the prior approval of Donald Trump. Donald Trump is casting himself here as somebody who is trying to fix a situation that he himself did not authorize, but that the Israeli government decided to pursue, or course of action that it decided to pursue on its own. That unspoken assumption, like everything else associated with Donald Trump, is a falsehood. And here is a post today from Dave DeCamp, who does fine work at antiwar.com. And he said, as everyone is sharing the latest Axios report, and by the way, I'm going to talk to you about that Axios report in just a second, it's worth noting that an Israeli official told Ynet earlier today that Israel's threat to attack Beirut was done in coordination with the U.S. And here you see a post he's sharing. The IDF issued a rare evacuation warning Monday for residents of Beirut's southern Dahya district, saying it would carry out targeted strikes there if Hezbollah continued firing rockets at Israeli cities. As an Israeli official said, the move was coordinated with Washington after Hezbollah failed to cooperate with U.S.-led ceasefire efforts. We have basically contradictory accounts. You have this official telling Ynet that Washington approved of it, coordinated the action or the planned strikes on Beirut with Israel, and Trump casting himself, at least implicitly, as somebody who was caught off guard and had to fix a mess that Benjamin Netanyahu created all on his own. Personally, I find the former scenario, that this was coordinated with the U.S., to be far more persuasive for a variety of reasons, including the fact that Trump understood perfectly well that if Israel began bombing Beirut, that might end up exacerbating the situation with Iran. And I doubt very much that Israel would be willing to alienate Donald Trump to that degree if when it depends upon the goodwill of the United States government and the support of the United States government and military for its very existence. And this is a theme that I've been, focused on in my reporting on this conflict and the genocide in Gaza. Israel is a pipsqueak in every conceivable sense relative to the United States. It is an insult to our intelligence, frankly, and I'm sorry for people who have a different view. I don't mean to offend you, but the idea that this tiny little country, so little territory, such a small population, so little natural resources, controls not only the government of the United States, but the governments of other Western countries as well, is preposterous. And when we make that claim, that Israel controls Western governments, what we're really doing to a degree is we're giving Western governments a free pass. We're transferring the majority of the responsibility for Israel's crimes on Israel, when in fact they're equal partners in these crimes. Israel does what the United States and the other Western powers want it to do. Israel is an arm of the West. It is a Western military garrison in the richest oil-producing region in the world. It is a giant US/NATO military base masquerading as a country. That's what it is. And so when Israel embarks on courses of action like this, destroying Dahya, especially when the United States is involved in so-called negotiations with Iran and the global economy is on the precipice of a catastrophe, it is almost inconceivable that Israel would do something this provocative without the prior approval of the United States, at least the tacit approval of the United States. Now, I mentioned it a moment ago, and Dave DeCamp talks about it in his post here, an Axios article from the ever-present, is he really former, Israeli intelligence agent Barak Ravid. His latest article claims, published yesterday, that Trump told Netanyahu during this call about the bombing of Dahya that he is fucking crazy. Now let's get into this article a little bit. And I'm going to quote from excerpts of the Ravid article. One U.S. official, all of this is based, by the way, as you'll see, on unnamed officials. Not a single one of them wants to go on the record. I don't know that Barak Ravid has ever done an article that wasn't based, at least in part, on unnamed officials. And he always gives us minimal information about these people. He won't even tell us what department of the government they come from. And he never explains why they don't want to go on the record. He just says they're not authorized to speak, or he doesn't say anything at all. And he never expresses any skepticism about what they're telling him, ever. So he says in his article, one U.S. official said Trump told Netanyahu that following through on his threats to bomb the Lebanese capital would further isolate Israel around the world. The United States at this stage is every bit as isolated as Israel. Two of these sources said Trump claimed he'd helped keep Netanyahu out of jail, a reference to his support during Netanyahu's corruption trial. Summarizing Trump's remarks to Netanyahu, the U.S. official said, quote, "You're fucking crazy. You'd be in prison if it weren't for me. I'm saving your ass. Everybody hates you now. Everybody hates Israel because of this," close quote. A second source briefed on the call said Trump was pissed and at one point yelled at Netanyahu, "What the fuck are you doing?" An Israeli official told Axios the planned strikes on Beirut would not be happening. I would not take that to the bank. Trump's decision to rein in Netanyahu, writes Ravid, was a clear signal that he doesn't want his key ally to get in the way of a deal with Iran. Okay, so what we're being told here is that Trump is prioritizing a deal with Iran. He really wants a deal with Iran, and Netanyahu is jeopardizing this deal. And it goes on, the article, and says the deal, which was proposed by Rubio, would involve Israel suspending its planned attacks on Beirut in exchange for Hezbollah halting its attacks on Israel. As I said, I find it impossible to believe. I could be wrong. Hey, man, I'm not perfect, but why would Hezbollah agree not to attack any part of Israel if Israel has free reign to attack all of Lebanon except for the capital, Beirut? That would be, in my opinion, and with all due respect to the resistance, an insane bargain, especially when Israel occupies a significant part of the area south of the Litani River. And the article continues, the U.S. has urged Israel against striking Beirut for several weeks as part of a broader de-escalation push, but a U.S. official hinted on Sunday that position could soften. So this is not a definitive rejection by Trump, according to this article, of the bombing of Beirut. He may give Netanyahu in the days ahead the green light to do that. The U.S. does not expect Israel to absorb ongoing attacks on its civilians by a terrorist organization, the official told Axios. Israel is the ultimate terrorist organization, of course. The intrigue, this is Ravid writing, Trump also claimed he'd had a very good call with highly placed representatives of Hezbollah who agreed that all shooting will stop, that Israel will not attack them, and they will not attack Israel. It is not clear which representatives he was referring to. This is what Ravid writes. This is as close as Ravid gets to expressing skepticism. Rather than say, it's difficult to believe that Hezbollah would accept this because it's such a lopsided arrangement and because Israel has repeatedly violated the ceasefire, he just says it's not clear which representatives of Hezbollah Trump was referring to. And then finally, Ravid writes, the Speaker of the Lebanese Parliament, Nabi Berri, told the Trump administration on Sunday that Hezbollah was ready for a full and immediate ceasefire with Israel and pledged to guarantee its implementation. Now, that's a very different thing from what Trump and Netanyahu are talking about. A full and immediate ceasefire, that means there's no shooting in Israel or Lebanon anywhere. They stop firing in all parts of both countries. That's what Nabi Berri said. He said a full ceasefire. He said nothing about Israel retaining the liberty to strike all parts of Lebanon except Beirut. And finally, Ravid writes, U.S. officials didn't believe Netanyahu would accept a full ceasefire, and they had made an unsuccessful push for a partial truce. If the U.S. wants Israel to stop firing, it has the ability to impose that outcome on Israel in a heartbeat, because Israel, to say it again, is existentially dependent upon the goodwill of the United States government. With that, I'd like to turn now to briefly the battlefield developments. Let's begin with events around the strategically important Beaufort Castle in the south of Lebanon. This, by the way, is an ancient Crusader fortress from which I've reported previously on 2 occasions, accompanied by Lebanese war correspondent Hadi Hotait and our comrade and friend Laith Marouf from Free Palestine TV. We did a report there about the importance of this particular site, both historically and militarily. And while we were there on one occasion, we actually witnessed a Hezbollah attack on an Israeli military base, which was visible from the fortress. And I'll leave a link to those reports from Beaufort Castle if you're interested in seeing them. You get a better sense of the meaning of this place and the significance of this site to both sides in this conflict. In any case, the Israelis claim that they just captured Beaufort Castle. They have raised a flag there, but it's very unclear as to whether or not they have secure control of it. And in fact, and having been there, I can tell you, I think it would be very, very difficult for them to maintain control because the soldiers on Beaufort Castle are going to be sitting ducks for the FPV drones and other projectiles of the resistance, but particularly the FPV fiber optic drones. And if you needed any proof of that, here it is. Near the site of Beaufort Castle, a commando was killed within the last 24 to 48 hours. He was struck by an FPV drone, and 3 others were wounded in that attack. 3 other Israeli terrorists, one critically. And the news just goes downhill from there. But before we go on to the other casualties Israel has suffered, let me just show you the video, which I think, I can't confirm this, but I believe that this is the video published by Hezbollah of the attack that killed this soldier and wounded 3 other Israeli terrorists. And just stopping there, that is the summit of Beaufort Castle. And as you can see, it dominates the surrounding hills and plains. Now, I just want to pause there. If you look down below at the summit, you can't see any soldiers or military equipment there. So it's not like the Israelis have succeeded in, forming any kind of a military base on top of Beaufort Castle. There are, as appears from this video, a smattering of soldiers who are hiding. And this drone happened to spot a few of them. Yeah, you can just see in the upper right-hand corner of this, or quadrant of this photograph, or this image, there is what appears to be a soldier in combat gear running behind these bushes in the tree, trying to escape the incoming drone, which he appears to have spotted. So, judging from that video, at least at the time that the video was taken, there seems really little indication, if any, that the Israelis are firmly in control of Beaufort Castle. Now, there was another this was an officer who was killed in the Israeli military. I believe this also happened in the vicinity of Beaufort Castle. This is a post by the war criminal Netanyahu in the last 24 hours. He says, Captain Dr. Yuri Yosef Sylvester, the doctor of the Scorpion Battalion in the Givati Brigade, fell in battle in southern Lebanon, and blah, blah, blah. I wonder about the medical ethics of a doctor who chooses to serve in a military that tortures and murders medical professionals and destroys hospitals just for sport. In any event, that's one less Israeli terrorist that the world has to deal with. Now, let's move on. There is another video published by the Lebanese resistance of yet another successful drone strike on an Iron Dome missile launcher. So that was, as you can see, an effective strike on, I think this must be the 20th or 30th Iron Dome missile launcher that the resistance has managed to take out of action. The Lebanese resistance, just within the last couple of months, it has been, and not to mention dozens and dozens and perhaps hundreds of Merkava tanks and other military vehicles have been damaged or destroyed with these extremely effective FPV fiber optic drone strikes. Now, moving on, let's look at what has been taking place in the Persian Gulf. In the last 24 to 48 hours, the U.S. side again precipitated a ceasefire violation, committed a ceasefire violation, and provoked a retaliatory response from Iran. The IRGC said on Monday that U.S. forces targeted a communications tower in Sidik in Iran's Hormozgan province. So this would be the province bordering the Strait of Hormuz. In response, the IRGC said its aerospace force struck the airbase from which the attack was launched, claiming that its designated targets were destroyed. The IRGC warned that any repeat of U.S. aggression would be met with a completely different response, adding that responsibility would lie with the aggressor and child-killing U.S. regime. This is, I think, a clear signal that tit-for-tat responses may be a thing of the past, and that Iran's military is fed up and will respond disproportionately to any further ceasefire violations. Now, according to the statement, and this is the Cradle, by the way, reporting on the statements of the IRGC, the strike was carried out in retaliation for the attack on the communications tower. The statement came after U.S. Central Command said it had carried out what it described as self-defense strikes against Iranian radar and drone strikes in Guruk and on Keshem Island, claiming it was responding to aggressive Iranian actions, including the downing of a U.S. drone. Well, what other aggressive actions are they talking about? It is not an aggressive action for the Iranian military to take down an unmanned U.S. drone, a drone from the aggressor that is in its airspace or approaching its airspace. That is a defensive measure taken against a state that has launched a criminal war of aggression against it. Now, Kuwait's military, according to the Cradle, announced that its air defenses had intercepted hostile missile and drone attacks while air raid sirens sounded across the country despite the ongoing U.S.-Iran ceasefire. The Kuwaiti army said explosions heard by residents were the result of interception operations, indicating that the U.S. attack may have originated from facilities in Kuwait. Let's recall that a couple of days ago, when this happened, when Iran was struck by the U.S. military, land-based targets were hit, and it believed, the Iranian military, that the strikes came from Kuwait, and they launched one or more missiles at Kuwait. We were told the same thing. We were told that the missiles were successfully intercepted, but then Bloomberg reported, hardly a pro-Iranian media outlet, that in fact, one MQ-9 Deep Reaper drone on the ground at the U.S. airbase had been destroyed, another one had been severely damaged, and that several U.S. military personnel had been injured by falling debris from an incoming Iranian missile that had been struck by a Kuwaiti air defense system. And by the way, I don't assume that it was actually struck by the Kuwaiti air defense system. That might be just a spin that was put on what actually happened. It's entirely possible that the Iranian missile was not struck by anything. It simply hit its target. it does seem rather fortuitous that debris would take out two MQ-9 Reaper drones on the ground. I would suggest to you what's more likely is that Iranian military was actually aiming at those MQ-9 Reaper drones. Now, moving on, here is a video of the missile launch at the U.S. Air Base in Kuwait, published by the Iranian military. Now, it's not clear if that was one launch shot by video from two different angles or if that were two missiles launched, but in any case, that we are told was the retaliatory response against the U.S. Air Base in Kuwait. And the hostilities continued from there. The IRGC Public Relations said, following the aggressive attack of an American terrorist and child-killing army on an Iranian ship called the Lion Star in the Oman Sea, the IRGC Navy, during a retaliatory operation, targeted the ship MSC Sariska, owned by the American Zionist enemy, with a cruise missile. The IRGC Navy announced that any aggression by the American child-killing army in this area will be met with a decisive response. IRGC published another video of what I understand is a missile launched at the MSC Mariska. Now, here is some satellite footage afterwards of a ship on fire in the Strait of Hormuz. Now, this ship appears to be, it's being approached, it appears, from fast attack boats from the Iranian Navy. It's not clear to me whether this is the ship, the Mariska, at which the Iranians launched a missile, land-based missile, or whether this is another ship that was struck by missiles launched from Iran's fast attack boats. In any case, there were more hostilities in the Persian Gulf. You just heard a moment ago that the CENTCOM, US CENTCOM, accused the Iranian military of taking down one of its drones. Well, the Iranians published a video of the destruction of this drone. Just pausing there, I'm going to show you again the missile taking out this drone. Notice the trajectory of the missile. It appears to be coming down towards the drone rather than coming up from the ground. This is consistent with reports that the Iranians have developed an unusual air defense system. They launch drones up into the sky that carry air defense missiles, and they wait in areas where they expect or anticipate that U.S. warplanes or drones may enter, and then they destroy them with air-launched interceptor missiles. So judging from the trajectory of this interceptor, which is coming down towards the drone, it may well be that it was fired itself from a drone, an Iranian drone, that was hovering in the skies waiting for enemy aircraft to come near. So here's the rest of this video. So again, watch the trajectory of the interceptor. Now, finally, I'd like to talk to you about something that happened outside of the Persian Gulf, and that is the death of a U.S. and a British soldier in Erbil in northern Iraq. A report summarized here from U.S. Army Central and Third Army. This is drop site news summarizing that report and providing some important background information. Breaking: U.S. and British soldier killed in a non-combat training accident at Erbil Air Base as Iran targets Kurdish opposition groups in same province. A U.S. Army soldier and a British soldier died in a non-combat military training accident at Erbil Air Base in Iraq's Kurdistan region on May 31st. According to official military statements, they said the cause of death was unrelated to combat operations, but Iran's IRGC launched ballistic missile strikes against Iranian Kurdish opposition groups based in Erbil province on the same day. What are the chances that they were killed in a non-combat operation on the same day? At 5:54 a.m., a missile struck the Kurdistan Freedom Party headquarters in Chamshar near Darash Akran, northwest of Erbil. And at 10:40 p.m., two missiles struck a Kurdistan Toilers Party Komala base in the Alana Valley. The Institute for the Study of War said the IRGC launched the strikes in retaliation for a Kurdish opposition attack on an Iranian border guard unit in Chaldron County on May 29th. It's not clear whether the training acts and the Iranian strikes have any connection. And let's recall here that the Americans and the Israelis have openly talked about using Kurds, in particular in Iraq, to launch strikes against Iran as part of a plan or a hope of destabilizing the Iranian government. In any case, that is my report for today. As you can see, the Iranians continue to demonstrate that they can respond quickly and effectively to any ceasefire violations by the United States. And I might add, they appear to have gained considerable power, as the University of Chicago professor Pape noted in the last 24 hours on X, because although it's not by any means clear that Trump is ultimately going to stop Netanyahu from attacking Beirut, the swiftness with which Trump picked up the phone and called Netanyahu when the Iranians said that they were going to halt the negotiations shows, I think, a bit of a desperation on the part of the White House. We'll continue to follow this extraordinarily important war closely. For now, I'm signing off from Athens, Greece on June 2nd, 2026.